I'll call this meeting to order. This is the March 21st meeting of the Sustainability Committee. The first thing we'll do is approval of the minutes. Kelly circulated the minutes before she left on vacation, and I at this time would seek any comments or corrections that people might have on the minutes as circulated. All right, hearing no corrections, the minutes as circulated are approved. Let's move on to public comments. We have a public comment period at our meetings, and we welcome the members of the public who are on the line with us to take up to 3 minutes each to share whatever you want to share with us. And I see Mike Davis already has his hand raised. If anyone else would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand. Or if you're not able to raise your hand, just go ahead and speak after Mike is done. Mike, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Lisa. And sustainability members all, I want to thank you for your service to the city. It's a very important committee and you're doing great things. I usually am admiring the work that you're doing, but I do have a concern about one of the work plan items that you have on the schedule tonight to discuss, and that is the composting initiative at Stonehorse Green. I had the unfortunate, initiative to clean up after people, and while we were trying to figure out how to keep Stonehorse Green effectively cleaned up over the last couple of summers. And it is a daunting prospect, I think, to consider composting for our first major initiative at Stonehorse Green. I think long-term it could work, but I worry about human nature. It was hard enough for people to recycle, let alone to put their garbage in a container at Stonehorse Green for the last 2 summers. And it's going to take some getting used to the ebb and flow of programs as we have them. I want to encourage you to consider it instead as an initial project, the kitchen at the senior center, in a much more controlled environment where the seniors can be trained readily, I think, and probably very interested in composting as well. With the daily lunches that they have at the senior center. I think that would be a far better initial enterprise to get some success under our belts as a community. And I know Tammy Derrickson, when we mentioned that to her at one of our committee development staff meetings, she seemed very intrigued with that as well. So that's my 2 cents. And again, thank you for all the work that you're doing, and it's good stuff. And I appreciate the time and effort that you're putting into it for the community.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. Would anybody else like to make a public comment? Now is your chance. I'm not seeing any hands raised. I'm not seeing anyone unmute their microphones. Last call for comments. Okay, then we'll close the public comment period. And I need to recruit someone to keep track of our time, be our timekeeper. Deb, have you done that yet? Sorry if I frightened you. If you could do it, that would be great. And I think you're muted.
Okay, are you going to be putting up the agenda so I can see how much time, or should I be looking for that?
Well, it is up, so I'm not sure.
Okay, well,
If you've got your view on a different setting.
no, it's up, but I'm saying, yeah.
Yeah, so 5 minutes for this next one, which is the staff report Q&A.
Where are we? Oh, we're on that. Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
So 5 minutes for this one. Okay, well, again, Kelly, before she went on vacation, she circulated her staff report, and I hope everyone had a chance to read it. and come prepared with questions. Who would like to start with any questions for Abby? Abby will be fielding questions to the best of her ability, and any questions that she can't will relay to Kelly. Dominic, I see your hand is raised.
Yes, so last session, the Sustainability Committee approved for the hazardous waste cleanup event, a sum up to some certain threshold amount. I was just curious, I see that event has been approved. I was curious to know where matching funds or alternate funds were identified, and what the financial commitment from the Sustainability Committee is.
Abby, can you answer that?
No, the only thing that I was prepared to ask for on the hazardous waste event was volunteers. I can quick look at the minutes and see if that dollar amount is listed.
I don't think it is. My recollection is that we committed, actually it is, now that you mention it, Abby, if it's in the motion, $2,000 was the maximum that we were prepared to spend.
Right.
So I'm
Okay.
guessing that's what Kelly told them, and that's why the summary or the staff report references possibly having to scale back, but we'll see.
Yeah, because it looks like each participating entity was asked for 6,000 and you approved 2,000. So you approved 1/3 of what was being requested. I do know right before Kelly left, she said that the event is happening. So I'm assuming she was able to secure funding elsewhere, but I don't know for certain.
Okay,
Lisa,
Kermit?
I was reviewing the minutes from the last meeting, and part of the discussion for this was, I think it was the minutes. Anyways, it's in the agenda packet. This plan was to scale back to match the funds. So if they have to pre-register and limit participation to be able to cover the right number of people with the money we have, that's what they're going to do. I don't see that information repeated in the staff report, but I think it's reasonable to assume that, given that Kelly is committed to going ahead with it, that plan is the way they're going.
Okay, and I see Rick has his hand raised. You have some intel on this, Rick? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
so I think people remember that I brought up during the last meeting that MAMSWAP, Madison Area Municipal Stormwater Partnership, has a pretty significant amount of money that Crystal Campbell has access to. And at least while I haven't seen that officially go through the information education subcommittee that I've been serving on for the last 20 years, my understanding is that Crystal and Kelly had talked after the last sustainability committee meeting, and that Crystal had indicated that to Kelly that MAMSWAP should be able to pick up the balance of whatever the city of Middleton isn't able to pick up, because my at least what I had described to both Crystal and also to Kelly, but primarily to Crystal, is that I felt that this is really kind of a more than just a city of Middleton event. And certainly it's great that the city of Middleton has agreed and has been willing to host, to coordinate finding a location in or near the city of Middleton. But in my opinion, and that's just strictly my opinion, as a Madison Area Municipal Stormwater Partnership I&E committee member, is that it really should be something that MAMSWAP, the greater Dane County area should be paying for, as opposed to just one individual municipality.
Okay, thank you for filling that information in for us, Rick. Dick, I see your hand is raised.
Yeah, on this issue, I think I read that it's at the Clark Street School, the area right in front of it. I know that well because my wife's been on the board there, so I've been over there many times. I'm questioning the facility. Are we going to have bathrooms? They're asking for people to volunteer, or maybe there's a 4-hour event. This hazardous waste, we're talking about needing to be maybe in suits or gloves. I mean, this is a significant thing, and we're just asking for volunteers. I think we should know a little bit more about it. I personally would be willing to do it, but I don't want to be in a Tyvek suit or gloved up, all day. And I would certainly need access to a bathroom and the thing. I'm questioning why we're not doing it over more where we have better facilities that the sustainability committee or the city government itself has, like over at the recycling center or near the operations center. Why are we doing it on a school ground? I'm questioning some of these aspects of the event. I mean, it's very important. I know my wife and I, we have some stuff that we're going to have to go through, and I definitely want to be able to take it there, and I'll volunteer in order to make sure I'm one of the 200, but I'm betting there are people all over the county that, if it's well advertised, would want to take advantage of this. So I'd hate to see it limited to whoever's the early bird gets the worm kind of thing. I think these things should be made available so that anybody could come knowing the rules.
Okay, thanks for that, Dick. Those are some good points. And I would say, since Kelly's not here and my guess is that they're still working on the exact plans. So what I would suggest is, when we come back to our work plan updates towards the end of the agenda, we'll talk then about who might be interested in volunteering on that day. And we'll just make sure that Kelly is aware who might be interested and get in touch. She can get in touch with all of you to make sure that you understand, before you actually commit, that you understand what you're going to be doing. I'd be really surprised if the volunteers would be in Tyvek suits. That sounds to me like something that trained technicians would be doing, but I don't know for sure. So, but think about that. And Deb already gave us the sign that it's time to move on. But since we're talking about volunteers, also, when we come back to the work plan updates, think about whether you'd be willing to help out with any of the, I don't know if there'd be more than one, but the Bike to Work Week event might be a nice opportunity for somebody to get involved and turn out to help encourage people and, I don't know, serve food or coffee or whatever the plan is. But think about that, and we'll solicit volunteers when we're done or get to the work plan. Okay, so let's move on then. Dick, your hand is still raised. Do you have a question, or is that just a? Okay, great, thanks.
Sorry.
That's okay. Let's move on. I see that we have Kathleen is on. Kathleen, can you let us know you can speak?
Hi, yes, and I'd love to share my
Hello.
screen if possible.
Okay, Abby, can you make that possible? Welcome, Kathleen. Thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
And Deb, please note the time. We've got 25 minutes for the presentation and Q&A.
Great. It was interesting. Kelly asked me to share a little bit about the sustainability components of our project Bell Farm. And I thought, oh, this is going to be so easy because I'm living and breathing this every moment. But then when I thought about trying to funnel it down for a presentation here, it was a little bit daunting. So I'm going to preface this by saying, as we move through it, I don't mean to gloss over some pretty big things. It's just that I want to make sure to give an all-encompassing viewpoint, and obviously I'll leave time for Q&A as well. So I'm going to share my screen. So my project is I think most of you know Bell Farm, which is on Bellefontaine Road. It was the Ziegler Farm. So the name Bell Farm is a nod to the history and to the future, and in terms of growth and lots of good things. It is from the start, from the very get-go, as we looked at this, we've approached this as an eco-agro wellness neighborhood with a big focus on that first part, the eco part. And I'll move through some of that in just a moment. So the land obviously overlooks Gray River Pond and the wetlands. It's beautiful. Again, it's 44 acres. It sits on the north end of Parmenter Street, with kind of right next to Misty Valley subdivision. And when we laid out when we approached the land, we approached it first with good land use, in mind, and in terms of that sustainability piece. And so one of our top goals was to keep 50% open space, which we were able to achieve. And although we are, we're approved for up to 880 dwelling units with most of that density along Parmenter Street, we really tried to be conscientious as to how this was laid out, because we believe in density and we believe in going vertical. We know there's a housing shortage, but we wanted to approach that from the standpoint of how do you do it but not also cover the earth. So as we come in from Misty Valley, and some of you have already seen this, so I'll move through it pretty quickly. We move from a transect of low density and a little more breathing space. And as we move our way toward Parmenter, things start to heat up, and it should feel really good as you're coming down Bellefontaine. And then it should start to feel more exciting and more vibrant and more heat as we come toward the intersection of Bellefontaine and this other public road here, which is Serenby Street. And then, from that sustainability standpoint, again, we were looking to do compact development and density clusters, leaving more of the earth available to drink and to breathe and to grow. And so I'm going to keep moving here. So the goal also from a sustainability standpoint was to create that walkable, complete neighborhood, a bikeable neighborhood, a neighborhood that promoted connections where you didn't feel like you had to get in your car to do everything. In fact, we tried to build it or design it in a way that everything you needed was right here. So there's the coffee shop, grocer, restaurants, pharmacy, daycare, that you only drive when you want to, not when you need to. And I even mean that from a work perspective, because we have a lot of workspaces built in throughout the whole neighborhood, so that anybody who doesn't want to be working in their house anymore, but you've got some flex because of your job and what's unfolded with the pandemic. There will be lots of opportunities to work right on site that isn't in your home. And we've incorporated a lot of walking paths and trails, and it will be an exploration. We tried to approach the walkability, not just in terms of sidewalks, but lots of trails and ways to explore and again, commune with nature. From an energy standpoint, geothermal, we'll be having geothermal. Each single family house will be required to have geothermal. And we did do a geothermal feasibility report on the entire 44 acres. At first, we were looking at the possibility of doing a complete campus-wide system, but the way that it played out in terms of this specific land and the way our development laid out, each home will have its own boring. Although some of the townhomes and some of the some of the more like missing middle housing, they may be able to share a boring, and we're still exploring that. We're looking at every roof as an opportunity. So solar will be throughout the development. Each single family house will be required to have solar. All the multifamily will have solar on it. And we are very close. I almost hate to say it, but we're very close to potentially making the decision to go no gas in the development. So no gas, would mean, I've been exploring, especially induction in terms of like induction cooktops. Obviously with solar, there are solar panels on roofs, but also like solar is evolving very quickly, even in terms of design. So that lower right corner, that's showing those Tesla panels, which again, a lot of this is moving very quickly. So I almost hate to show images and stuff, because by the time we're actually putting these up, this could look differently. But I just kind of wanted to give that, just give that sort of taste. Geothermal, so that we're heating and cooling, with geothermal, serving us both in the summer and the winter. That compact development aspect, that there's just, again, with compact development and leaving more of the earth open to drink and breathe and grow, but also that ability to, like, from a mental health perspective, from a spiritual perspective, more opportunities to commune with nature and interact with, the world that's not built. And that's why I think when we're really mindful about land use, we do not have to cover all of the earth in order to like solve the issues of affordable or housing and things along those lines. Again, just a peek at compact development, small footprints. From a stormwater management perspective, getting back to that 50% open space, that's a big part of us being able to do like really good stormwater management. This has become like a personal passion of mine. I find it fascinating. I think we all should know this stuff and work with it to the best of, in a way that maybe like those of us in the general public have not before. By keeping 50% open space, there's less impervious, less runoff, more ability for infiltration. I'm speaking to the choir here, so I almost like, I'll move through this pretty quickly. But with Bell Farm, we're both doing a robust site-wide system and per lot water management. So each single family house will also have to have its own stormwater management plan, we're calling it, and really show how they're going to handle the water in a way that meets the needs of our development so that we're not sending our water downstream. And the part of the reason of doing it in terms of not just a site-wide system, but also each building is we want everybody to have a hand in it, everyone to have a sense of personal responsibility for water. And we feel like that's part of the inspiration, the educational process, and that we all have to take care of our business. To me, a massive part of the stormwater management is that inspection of the stormwater management system, because soils shift and change. Inspection and maintenance of the stormwater management system is not an afterthought, but it's built right into the HOA budget. So it's a robust line item that's already there, already accounted for. The money is there to make sure that we're inspecting this on an ongoing basis and that there's money there to actually address things as they shift and need to be changed, so that you don't have people up in arms that they have to put more money in the kitty to try and correct stormwater management. We're going to be planning for that from day one. And again, I just see the whole way that we are approaching stormwater management as an opportunity to drive awareness. It's a critical topic, and to embrace it. Again, as a developer, I want to embrace this. I don't want to push against it. This is really critical. So the role of the HOA, we're again looking to the HOA for a lot of different things here, but the sustainability guidelines and design guidelines will be built right into the covenants. So you will not be able to build a home here without geothermal and without solar. And again, we will, in terms of the ongoing maintenance of the site-wide systems, have a robust HOA line item. Each single family home doing its part. Each single family home, as I mentioned, will have solar power storage and geothermal, and each one will have its own stormwater management plan. Passive design consideration, we're working through and with architects, and all of this is being considered, and different design considerations coming in so that we can be more efficient in the way that we're building as well, in terms of how the buildings lay on the land, working with and around the sun. Sometimes we got to work around it. The building envelope, making sure we're not losing energy, windows. And here's the thing that, some of you have heard me say before, but this idea that building in a high quality way overall, even separate from the sustainability measures you're doing in terms of solar and geothermal, separate from that, just building in a high quality way matters. And because when we build crap, right? I'll use multifamily for an example. When we build crap, people tend to move out year after year. They don't covet the place that they live. They just move to the next new building that's there, right? And we end up building blight. All of that churn year after year as people are moving in and out, and all that crap that sits on all that stuff that sits on the side of the road, that is not good for the earth. Our need, or the feeling that we need to tear down buildings because they were built poorly in the first place, that's not good for the earth. So this idea of quality, I think, is something that gets way overlooked when it comes to sustainability. And I mean that both, I think sometimes the building will look higher quality-ish on the outside, but then not enough care is paid to the quality on the inside. And again, you get people not feeling fulfilled about where they live and just wanting to move out. I don't think quality is incented enough, and sometimes it's not even optional as you try to make the numbers work. So the market skews toward cheap, and I see this especially on the multifamily side. And obviously this going cheap leads to greater short-term profits and more affordable units in the short term. But as citizens and as the earth, we pay tremendous long-term costs. And I think one way to possibly look at quality is that to have cities and governments also look at ways, can we find ways to incent quality? Can those incentives make it easier to build high quality the first time while also keeping rents in check? And can you imagine what this would mean to the city, any city, to have all the building being done be high quality? Can you imagine what that would mean to the earth to not have to keep, rebuilding? Food. So as I mentioned, we're an eco-agri wellness hood. So the agri part has shifted for us because as we worked our way through our concept reviews, the land we were originally dedicating toward one part of the aspect of our farm, we ended up dedicating to parkland use, which was an important part of moving through the process. That meant we had less ability to do the agricultural component. And by agricultural component, I mean an ability to raise some of our own food that will serve our farm to table restaurants, our coffee shop, our tapas bar, the ability to have a community CSA. And one of the reasons I was okay letting that land go for parkland use was, number one, parks are important, but number two, really the most important part for me of how we can start to look at agriculture is with the vertical farming. And that doesn't take much space, and that's the beauty of it. So the vertical farming where you can grow a lot more food on less land. And so we have space allocated in our development for a couple of these vertical greenhouses. And I don't know how that will work yet in terms of maybe a partnership with the UW Ag Department. I'm looking at different ways that we can handle that more so, not only because it'll serve the community in terms of our own food production and just food security, knowing there's some food available, especially with everything going on in the world, that we have a way to feed ourselves right here in the development and maybe share with our neighbors too. But also from the standpoint that I see this as the future of food. I mean, with the Netherlands, they're growing so much food on such little land. I think they're the second highest exporter of food in the world on very little land because they've gone to this vertical farming. And it's a way, again, to keep more of the rest of the land open for biodiversity and rewilding and not spraying with fertilizers and pesticides and all of that. So if nothing else, it'll help feed our development, but it'll also help show and serve as an example. So some of the constraints as a developer, I'll say as a developer, some of the constraints that I face in terms of the sustainability as being a developer who values sustainability, sometimes, as I'm sure everybody knows, because we're all up against it, right, is that there are competing forces within the city committees that make it hard to stay the course that you wanted to go from a sustainability perspective. There's also, I'm just gonna close this part for a second here. There's also this, from a developer standpoint, there's this tension between affordability, and that's not just in terms of profit, but also making sure that we can keep housing affordable. And, there's that tension between that and then the upfront costs of doing the right thing. But the irony is that the cost of doing the wrong things are immeasurable. And so I think we have to find a way to to work through that tension in a better way. And so I see as some of the opportunities that in order to develop in a sustainable way, it's going to require partnerships, that there's no one entity or individual that can do this on their own. Me as a developer on my own, I can't achieve all this by myself. You as the city can't achieve it on your end. Individuals can't, third parties can't. But if we come together and we're really determined and focused, I think coming together, we can make a lot of this happen. And we can come together and do the right thing the first time up front, build in a high quality way, in a sustainable way, so that it's done. And then we can all reap the benefits over time. And the last point is that the help that maybe can come the developer's way with this is that it's not a moving target. I think I have found even with even conversations around TIF is that, and especially when you're talking a bigger project like ours that has a longer time frame, I totally understand that TIF has to be used in a way to meet the city's goals. I think everything we're doing with Bell Farm is meeting the city's goals, but the things that will qualify for TIF seem to change pretty quickly. And that, as we're trying to figure out our performance and our financial feasibility reports, we need to know that information up front and be able to hang our hat on it and not find out, 3 months later that no, now the focus is here. And so I'm just giving you that advantage or that perspective from the developer standpoint, that if we can find ways to help fund sustainability measures in development, that if the developer could have that information up front and hang their hat on it, and obviously with maybe a timeline to expire if they don't get rolling on it. But I think there are lots of opportunities. I feel like I've just skated over the surface here, but again, we're trying so hard to do something meaningful and beautiful here. And again, overall, I'm just so excited to be doing this in Middleton because of the goals that the city has. But I also wanted to make sure to share some of the constraints and where I see some of the opportunities or missed opportunities. So that's my, I'll stop sharing now.
Excellent, thank you. And Deb, how much time do we have left
We
on
have
this one?
6 minutes left for Q&A.
Okay, so Dick, we'll start with you.
Hey, thanks. Well, I'm really interested in what you're describing. It sounds pretty intriguing, and I have 3 questions that I want to raise, each kind of distinct. The first is on the geothermal end. You're saying that you're going to ask each homeowner to put in their own. First question I have is, are we sure that geothermal without gas backup is feasible in our climate? I mean, I'm really for it. I'm just asking that question. And the second thing is, by putting the financial burden on each homeowner, given that they're right next door to a whole bunch of the different homes there, is that inefficient, or couldn't we somehow come up with a or group buy on the whole system so that it wouldn't be that expensive, as expensive for each homeowner? So that's the first question. The second one is, I have a question on the orientation of the lots. I'm just curious, the orientation does it matter if a lot is a north-south kind of rectangle or an east-west? You need to be able to put the homes in with a southern exposure. So does it matter when a developer puts in a series of lots, that if you really want everybody to maximize their solar, that is there one orientation that tends to work better for the shape of a home and its roof line that matters? And for example, single family homes, I could see for myself, for example, if we move from our home, which we might, I don't want to go into a home that's boxy that requires 2 levels, because I want to get to a single floor kind of layout, maybe with a basement or something that would also be fixed. But I want to be able to have most of the living on one level. And then the final question would be on runoff. Is there 100% or greater goal of runoff compared to the 90% that the state standard is? And could we even get greater than 100%? And I feel like that if we really want to be on the top of this, the developer has to have initial role of the lots and the green space and how water all moves through the property. And yes, we can require each homeowner to put in rain gardens and direct downspouts and all that. But it feels like a lot has to be done up front by the developer before you can put the burden on each. So anyway, the questions on the geothermal financing and whether it's requiring that without any gas backup is a good idea. Solar orientation and the type of single family homes, and then the runoff question.
Okay, and then just in the interest of time, because we do have 3 other people with their hands raised, and I know I have some questions, Kathleen, if we pose the questions now, would it be possible to get a written answer? I don't want to put you to any trouble.
Yeah, they'll probably be short, only
Yep.
from the sake of I'm also like in the
Sure.
midst of everything. But I can try to get some short responses there. In terms of the geothermal, again, we had a full-blown geothermal feasibility study done on the entire site, which did indicate that campus-wide geothermal did not, it just was cost prohibitive. It just, again, that study has already been looked at. There are, again, some areas that, and we're not done, by the way, exploring all of that. We're going to be coming back to the table with, we worked with MEP, which is now Salis O'Brien on that, but we will be able to get some efficiency as when we look at, like I said, the townhomes, or when you have 4 units with attached walls, they'll be able to share some things there. So that has already been carefully considered, and nothing is, I mean, no final decision has been made on any of this. We will continue as we bring in data to refine the best and most efficient situation for each lot and overall. I hope that answers the question. I'm sorry, I forgot. What was another question?
Runoff.
Well, the runoff is the.
We have been working, I mean, we have been at this, I don't know, if Abby, you want to jump in at all, but I could have had my civil engineer on here. We have been thoroughly at this in terms of stormwater management and grading and the stormwater ponds for about a year now, over a year now. So we've already worked through Water Resource Management Committee. We do have robust site-wide geothermal stormwater management ponds. Abby, do you have the, I can't remember what it is that we're meeting. I can't remember where where that landed in terms of, and again, I can come back and bring my civil engineer on to speak to the levels that we're meeting, or that we are meeting in terms of that, but we've taken it the distance. So we will have site-wide stormwater management, and also we're going to require the homeowners to do their part as well. So I hope that answers that part of it. And in terms of living on one level, there are, one thing I didn't mention is you move through Bell Farm, there are multiple housing styles and types, and there will be many kinds of units that are all on one floor. And there will be some that also have upstairs. So we wanted to keep that in mind. We want this to be a richly diverse community in terms of people from at all stages and ages of life. So we've thought about that a lot as we thought about each housing type. In terms of how to, allow people and provide what works for the most amount, or the greatest amount of people, if that makes sense.
Okay, great. Dominic and then Kermit.
So I'll keep my time shorter by just truncating down my praise for this. Sounds awesome. And I'm really excited about it. My 2 questions. One was regarding kind of the hidden lever of sustainability in single family homes, which is square footage, right?
Mhm.
So 95% system for a 3,000 square foot home actually uses a lot more energy than, 90% efficient system for a 1,500 or 2,000 square foot home. So question on that. And then second, if you could just speak to equity, just generally as a pillar of sustainability. Thank you.
Well, in general, as I kind of failed to mention as I went through the presentation, again, we have multiple housing types and sizes and price points also for people to step into. So that was a big consideration as well. And the multifamily also has lots of different sizes and types. So we wanted that both from the standpoint of sustainability perspective, but also an affordability aspect. And so that there were many opportunities at different price points to come into this community and enjoy it. The largest, so we do have, I can't remember how many lots are estate homes. It's not many, but those would be the largest by far, which are capped at about 3,300 square feet. But a lot of the houses there's down to like 1,000 square feet, 1,300 square feet, 1,500 square feet, 2,000, we're really trying to do compact development, and small doesn't, I've fortunately been places where small does not feel horrible. And I'm not talking tiny, tiny homes where your desk flips over into your kitchen table and then flip. I'm not talking that, but I've been places that have had small footprints that when they're designed well are just breathtaking to live in. And so, and again, then the energy requirements are much less as well. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, Kermit and then Christy, and then I'll have one question after that and we'll wrap it up. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I'm really excited by this project where you described it. As you were going through, you kept on knocking off another checkbox for me, like, are they going to, will they? And so I'm really impressed and delighted. I really am excited, hoping to see that this development will show that it can be done, that a vast sustainability vision can be pulled off. And two questions that I haven't been explicitly asked that are on my mind anyways, and I mean, others have been good as well. One, starry-eyed projects, quote unquote, sometimes collapse. They don't happen. They end up compromising their vision. Some people might argue that Middleton Hills had some of that downsizing of their vision over the years as they tried to, they sold a big story and it didn't quite happen the way, at least way back when. What are you doing to anticipate to make sure that this vision does become the showcase development that I think it has the potential to be? And related to that, this is kind of the squaring the circle. This is the magic touch to figure out how to do it and maintain and provide inclusion and affordability.
Right.
And so what have you done, or what are you thinking, or what help do you need for that piece of the puzzle to happen?
Well, we've been at this a long time and have been planning for a long time. And obviously the proof is in the pudding, and we're going to be submitting our SIP for phase one, possibly as early as that first week in May. So by doing it in phase, so yes, ultimately the whole project, but taking it in phases and applying the principles and learning and continuing to evolve with it, that will be helpful. But also from that inclusion and equity standpoint, I mean, multifamily, as you saw, is a big piece of this. So there's multifamily, but that multifamily has both rentals and, I'm going to knock on wood here because this is not a done deal, a potential condominium component. Condominiums are very complicated in the financing market and in the even the architects and the legalities with architects and builders. So it seems like, oh, just build condominiums, but there's a lot of hoops we're jumping through with that. But by having the multifamily piece of, again, a wide variety of entry points and sizes, both on the rentals and on the condos, and then even on the homes, the shotgun homes, I think are 1,000 square feet. So they're, again, keeping things accessible and knowing if your situation changes, you'll be able to step up if you want to, step down if you need to. It was designed with all of that in mind. And I know that Again, with Middleton Hills, I think they have some apartments or some condos. I don't know how big of a piece of it that was out of the gates. But even on that apartment side, trying to design with, again, the thought that people want to move in and they never want to move out because it just feels so good living here. But again, we are, it's why we went, and did a $20,000 geothermal feasibility study way back when. We wanted to know all of these things up front about the best approach to it. And obviously we'll be trying to work with outside groups as well in terms of, the potential to get funding for certain aspects of this. But yeah, I don't know that I'm robustly answering your question, but
Okay, well, you provided a lot of information and food for thought, so thank you. And Christy, we're already over the time, so you'll get the last question. I'll just email my questions to you, Kathleen.
okay.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Lisa. So I made a quick list here. I'll try to keep it short, but Kathleen, I would love to take this up, additionally with you if possible. By the way, I used to go to the studio sometimes. I loved it. It was wonderful. And actually, I think I watched your movie because I was a pharmaceutical rep back in my day too. So we got that. Okay. First thing, I live in Middleton Hills actually, and we didn't know if we'd like it here, but we love it. We've been here for 14 years. And we live right across from Northside School, which is on High Road, which is just sort of up the hill from where, the neighborhood will be. And the first thing that comes to mind is, and this is probably a city thing, this isn't your thing, but I just think it should be noted that I live right on High Road. We're the last house here. And gosh, sometimes these cars just speed by, so quick. And there's a school right here, so it's just like, we got to figure out like how to keep traffic a little bit more under control.
Could I have you speak to Public Works?
Sure. Yeah, just sure. We'll talk later offline. Well, let's do that.
Yeah.
So I'll just keep it short. So, I just heard you say, my question was going to be, but the group geothermal, I just had somebody come here. We're very compact, just to see if we could, retrofit geothermal, because our furnace is 19 years old. And we would have, because it's a tight fit here, if we did anything, we'd have to rip up the concrete driveway and do vertical, which is more expensive. And they said, the guy was telling me too, actually, and based on recommendation from a previous program for this, but if you can do it in a group initially, that's what he said too. So it's like, if your feasibility study wasn't $20,000 and it was one, I would say let's get another study from somebody else. But that's
well,
all
and like I said, nothing is a completely done deal with it.
Yeah.
We won't even start. Nothing is a completely done deal yet. We are still working through all these things. So we will keep pushing and churning that to make sure that we're coming up with the best solution. But there's a lot to it.
Yeah. Okay. And then real quick. So one thing in these tighter houses, so sometimes the air conditioners are constantly going, and if it's geothermal and not a heat pump on the outside, there's no sound. It would just be like, too much sound is irritating too, especially these tight houses. Okay. So that's that. I love the native plants and pollinators. I'm guessing is all going to go in there. Deep rooted plants is key. So that's great. Okay. There are condos in Middleton Hills. They're over by the mailboxes.
Yeah.
Which actually leads me to another point. Third point.
Christy,
yeah.
is this your final question? Because we really should move on. We have another presentation. I don't want to keep those speakers.
Okay. Why don't we touch base offline, Kathleen? The last point is the daycare. I think the daycare would be really key. There's a huge shortage here in Middleton.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you, everybody. I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. And we'll take you up on the offer to have you come back and maybe bring your engineer and continue the conversation with us. Because I know Kermit raised a question that made me think, are there some examples of this in practice that you can point us to? So we'll welcome you back and appreciate what you're trying to do. It sounds really great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we'll move on now to the next item 4 on the agenda. And my first question for the speaker is going to be, is it Acker Farm or Acre Farm? 'Cause I've heard it both ways. So
It
so we
is
have a
Acre Farm.
presentation, and that's what I thought. Okay, and so who do we have speaking? Tom Rogers, you're going to give the presentation?
Yes, I'll start out. My name's Tom Rogers. I'm a landscape architect with Smith Group, and I am joined by Bruce Weber, my colleague, or Bruce Morrow, my colleague, was on. Oh, he's still there. Hey, Bruce. Bruce is landscape architect, also with Smith Group. We have another meeting with the park group tonight, so he might have to jump off before we're
Okay.
all the way done. And
All right.
then Chad Whitman and Carrie Whitman with Encore Development are here also.
Great, well, take it away. Thanks for being here, all 4 of you.
Thank you. And can I share my screen?
Please do.
Thank you. Oh yeah, sorry about that. Okay. One moment. There we go. All right, can everybody see my screen? So it is the acre property, and I have been corrected on that as well. So thank you. I'm glad you asked. So we'll go over just a little bit about some of the location and the surrounding context, and then we'll dive into where we're at in our process. And this is a concept design for us. We're in the preliminary stages of the design, and we're looking for your feedback on our concept tonight. So the acre property is roughly 107 acres located just to the west of Pheasant Branch, just a little bit north of Middleton Hills. It's bordered by Pheasant Branch Road to the east and High Road to the west. It is farmland to the north, and there's a little parcel that's here to the south with some wetlands as well. As part of the city's land use plan, it is in the planned neighborhood area just to the west of Pheasant Branch. You can see the site outlined here in the red dashed line that's here, and this zone all indicated as planned neighborhood. We did look pretty closely at topography and stormwater, especially as we considered how everything laid out on the site. One of the things to note, there is a high point that's up in the north part, and there's a pretty distinct ridge that goes through, and it mostly falls off to the west and then falls off to the east and makes its way down here. And we really took that into heavy consideration as we laid out the homes and as we laid out roads and building lots on the site. So we're really paying attention to stormwater. This is just some information on some of the steep slopes. It's generally a pretty flat site. Most of the slopes are less than 5%. It's pretty easy to work with. It's rolling farmland. What we did find, and we found this later in the year when we started on the project, there is a location here in the southeastern corner that we do think is potentially a wetland. That has not been officially delineated yet because the ground was frozen when that happened. So we'll be doing some additional exploration with that, but that is our suspicion that zone will be wetland there. So we've been designing around it. The only existing structures on site are the existing farm that's here. There's a few out parcels that you'll note as we move through this process that are existing homes that are on Pheasant Branch Road. This shows the overall location of the future planned bike paths as they go through the site on Bellefontaine and then to the north of the site on the bike map that you see up here. And then you see those couple outlots that I talked about here as well. There is some future park land that has been planned as part of this area, and we've incorporated that into our site. There's some existing utility information. It's well served by utilities on the west side in both cases. If you want, I can go back to those slides, but I'll skip over for the better part of tonight. So this is our concept plan, and I want to walk through a couple things. This just shows the general layout. Remember, we're still at the beginning of the process, so we will expect to be refining this a little bit. As I said before, we looked at this as one of the key aspects was this high point of the site right here. That's really a nice view. And what we wanted to do was create park and open space at the center of our development. So we landed that really in the middle of this high spot in a really prominent location that we thought would fit great for the community, great for the neighborhood, and we wanted to use that open space to tie the site together. So you see this light green as park space, you see these dark green areas as green space, and some of green space will convey stormwater, but it will also connect these different spaces through paths. So you can see this interconnected nature of the green space that goes through the site and some of the rear yards, and then connects over to Pheasant Branch as well. So really pulling that idea of open space up through the site. We wanted to make sure we had a mixed use and a mix of housing types. So you'll see a few different things, and I'll go through a couple pictures about what those could be like. Overall, we worked in density from west to east. So our most dense areas on the west side, our least dense areas on the east side. So this red portion here is about a 12-acre parcel that will be senior living, and it'll be a few different structures. I can show you an example of how it might lay out relative to the overall site area, but that will be, that's still to be determined what that final layout is going to be. There's an apartment site here on the lower southwest corner here. There's what we've designated as stormwater, and that's this blue color here and this blue color here. And we've designated these as stormwater areas. They're preliminary size, and we will be refining those as we move forward. But that larger density on High Street, and then as we move into the development a little bit farther, we're pulling Bellefontaine through into the north, and we've bordered that with townhomes. And then behind that sit two pocket neighborhoods, which will be cottage homes. So a smaller home, they share a joint open space that their front door is on, and then their alley loaded units. And then the balance of the site is developed with a mix of different single family lots. Overall, I talked a little bit about that connectivity and really putting open space at the center of what we're doing, making sure that we have a good character there. And then our stormwater was really a main organizational driver for how this fits together. I talked a little bit about the housing types. These are examples of what some of those might look like from this townhome product that could be 2 units, it could be 8 units. It could expand a little bit up and down. Cottage homes are the pocket neighborhood. You can see that they're alley loaded with a central shared open space. So they're a little bit smaller home, and then they have a front door on that space. This shows, this is not our site. This is what the senior living portion could look like. It does have some mix of uses. We'll have some community room space. We'll have a few different buildings that make up the overall portion of the development. And then just an example of the single family that could be located there. I talked a little bit about stormwater. We've preliminary sized about 6 acres of dedicated stormwater. That's based on the overall average impervious surface that we would have. And we're looking at ways to distribute infiltration through that. As I said, we're at the beginning of our design process. So this is concept. So we're working on how that works together. We've got to get some additional information on soils conditions and where any adjustments we need to make to roads and layout, and that will be incorporated throughout this as we move forward. We expect that detention zone to decrease a little bit. So the greenways will help convey the stormwater that you can see. These blue lines indicate where we have trails, but they're ubiquitous with the greenways along the edges. And then there'll be distributed rain gardens in the pocket neighborhoods and of course in the single family homes as well. So that's just a brief overview with that. I can go back to any slides, or we can open it up for questions and comments.
Hey, thank you for that. I see Dominic has his hand raised, so we'll go to you first, Dominic.
Sure. Thank you, Tom, for the overview. And I can appreciate all that goes into making these proposals and refining concepts. I'm pretty new to property development myself, but I got pretty excited when I started learning a little bit about complete neighborhoods and the city comprehensive plan. Could you maybe speak to what a complete neighborhood means to you, and maybe point out some elements of this proposal or this concept that would highlight City of Middleton's pursuit of complete neighborhoods?
Well, I think overall we're looking at incorporating a mix of housing types. So we are meeting some of those different ranges of affordability, creating good streets, creating good stormwater, creating good open space experience throughout. So we're looking at all different levels of people and how we can pull them all together.
Okay, we'll go to Dick and then Deb.
Hi, can you go back to the earlier slide where you showed the direction of where stormwater was going?
Sure. I'll try not to go too fast, sorry.
You
you go.
can zip through fast. There, yeah. So on the east is the Conservancy. And I Deb and I actually did a walk of the eastern edge on Pheasant Branch yesterday, just to get kind of a feel for exactly what you were showing here.
Mhm.
And I guess the question is, because you are right next to one of the highest value environments to the city, being the Conservancy, and clearly when you convert open land to fairly high density subdivision, you're going to have more runoff from all the rooftops and roads and driveways, whatever. And you can see by your map, there's quite a bit of water that's draining down south and then to east, coming into the Conservancy, say below, south of the parking lot. And then there's water, and then there's water above that. And I guess the county or somebody has put a new culvert underneath Pheasant Branch Road where that water, if you go north, right, that part up above there, just slightly above, somewhere there's a culvert that's going basically, not that far north.
Okay.
Yeah, right, somewhere in there, there's a culvert that's going in that will drain actually through Pheasant Branch Road and will go into the new pond that's in the new Conservancy area where they've just planted all the seeds. So I guess I'm wondering, are you committed to 100%, or I'm not sure if the 100% standard is going to have to be there for you, or whether you're still only subject to the 90% standard. And since so much of your water is going into the Conservancy, and then you also mentioned you're going to ask homeowners to do rain gardens, but is there any covenant or any requirement that they do? Or I guess there's a lot on stormwater management that could impact the Conservancy. So I'm curious to know what your reaction to it is and how you plan to really minimize the impact to the Conservancy.
Thank
I
you
can
for-
answer this one if you want.
Go ahead, Chad.
Hi, everybody. My name is Chad Whitman. I'm the developer of the site. To answer your question, we are definitely working towards 100% stay on. We've got some soil tests to do in the next few weeks here that I believe are going to show that it's quite feasible to do that. So that is our goal, but we don't have enough information right now on the soils to say yes, 100% for sure, but that's the goal. As far as rain gardens, we're not going to require rain gardens that are not, I don't want rain gardens on individual lots because frankly, people don't know how to take care of them, become non-functional, and it just doesn't work. So we would have rain gardens centrally located in our drainage ways and so on that are maintained by the HOA, because homeowners unfortunately don't understand. Some homeowners, I shouldn't say everyone, but we end up having problems on private property that we have a hard time fixing. They're not well maintained. So I do not want to have individual homeowners responsible for rain gardens on their particular property.
Yeah, I mean, that's good to know, because I think the presentation indicated, hinted at, well, we're going to be having homeowners have rain gardens, but exactly that. I mean, if you can't require them, and if they don't want to do them, then they won't work. And if that's part of the overall stormwater management plan, to hope that homeowners will pick up the other 10%, to get to 100%, it may not work. So I'm glad to hear that you're looking at committing to up to 100. It would be nice if you would commit to 100 and find it before you finish the final design and get final approval, that you would figure out how you're going to get 100%.
Thanks, Dick. We'll go to Deb and then Kermit.
How much open space are you, I have three questions. So how much open space are you providing in your plan? The last development we heard about was 50%, so I didn't hear a percentage. Also, are you reducing impervious surface, like having sidewalks only on one side of the road, having more narrow streets, things like that, grassy swales, et cetera? Solar, any solar on the rooftops anywhere? Or do you have your lots oriented so that solar would work? Are they facing south or whatever? And also the Conservancy is all native plantings, all prairies, et cetera. So in the front portion on Pheasant Branch Road, are you planting any native plantings along the road? And I guess the last question would be, Dominic asked about a complete development. Are you having any kind of services, amenities that would reduce driving, that they could stay on property and get groceries or whatever?
Sure. I've got a couple answers, and then maybe Chad can wrap up. Overall, we have I'll say about 30 acres that's dedicated to a combination of both parks and open space, and that includes wetland and greenways. That includes that park and that green space. There's a little bit more that would be open space in those pocket neighborhoods as well, but that number is not included in that. I think we're at about 29 acres altogether there. And yes, we are looking at draining. We've incorporated some of these swales and infiltration areas, and then there's potential for some services in the senior living area. I don't know if we have determined what those services are. Ted, maybe you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, so there would be a restaurant open to the public, a hair salon, a coffee shop, that type of thing. So there would be services available to the entire neighborhood in a public fashion. It's not like it is restricted to the people that live on that piece of property. They'd like to have the rest of the neighborhood join their facilities as well.
Oh,
Any
and
native plantings?
Yep. Sorry, I just looked at my notes. Yeah, we did. You can see a buffer that we've provided along this edge that could be potentially planted in that way. That's this green strip that's right here.
Okay, and solar?
Solar would be up to the individual homeowners. A vast majority of these lots are oriented very nicely for rooftop solar, but that would be an individual's choice, not mandated.
Okay, thank you.
Kermit,
Hi, thanks. Well, I'm hoping you guys were taking notes from the Bell Farms presentation. There were a lot of features and design elements which are definitely in alignment with our sustainability visions as we're looking at what constitutes sustainable development. You mentioned solar isn't required. Are there any sustainability design features or elements for the housing that is going to be in some way included, expected, defined? That would include things like air source heat pumps or geothermal heat pumps or all electric housing, with cooking, heating provided by electricity. Any of those kind of sustainability design features that will reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase the use of clean energy.
We, other than building very efficient houses, and most of the houses are smaller in size. The cottages start at 1,250 square feet. And we do offer, car charging options for the garage and so on and so forth. We do solar prep packages, so it's easy to convert to solar if you want to. But I don't see feasibility of geothermal in this particular neighborhood because of the sheer cost of it. There's a tug of war between affordability and sustainability. And I've spent 30 years of my career trying to figure out how to provide both to people. And the way I've found to provide some level of affordability is to make it easy for people that are of a mind to do so, to do it for themselves. But we do not plan that for them. We have, like I said, solar ready. We have pipes that run to the attic. They're all ready to go. But we don't make that decision for people. We leave it up to them.
And when you're talking about affordability, are you doing any kind of assessment of operating costs, life cycle costs for the different alternatives? Because that's another potential selling point for sustainability, if you actually look at the lifetime operation of a home, if you do it more efficiently, you do it with less fossil fuel, you can come out ahead.
Yeah, we can certainly do that. Unfortunately, the reality of the situation is for many people that want to buy a home, they're not in a position, at least when they buy their first home, to take advantage of such things. And yes, in the long run, it might be a very viable option. I mean, I've been through numerous studies on geothermal with my own houses. I've gone down the road on numerous things, and there has to be some provision made to get families into homes as well. I mean, we have to find that right mix, and I can't dictate geothermal and keep initial purchases affordable, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
In my
And
opinion.
I'm not hanging my hat on geothermal as the only option. Like you say, there's air source heat pump technology that's becoming increasingly effective and operational at lower temperatures, for instance. So.
I have not done any recent studies on new air source heat pump technologies, but I'd be happy to look into that because I'm always looking for another alternative. Trust me, believe me. You know, obviously there's levels of insulation and closed cell foam, and we do all of that we can, that is still has a short-term noticeable return. We do every one that we can.
One last question then, are these homes going to be built according to current state of Wisconsin residential building codes? Or are you going to be conforming to I think it's IEC 2021, which I think is the most recent code that has.
No, we don't use
standards.
we don't use IEC, but we do use Energy Star. That's the code that we build to.
Okay, we'll go on to Christy, and I'll just interject, seconding what Kermit is suggesting. You know, Middleton does have a 100% renewable energy goal to achieve it by 2050. So if there's any way to incentivize the installation of solar or geothermal, anything that you know, upfront could be incorporated into these designs, or maybe packaged together in a way that tries to make them more affordable for the home builders, that would be greatly appreciated. Christy?
Thank you. Yes, I will just echo Lisa's thought and Kermit's thought that I am absolutely on the same page. I just really think there's no reason not to do at least air source heat pumps at this point. And I realize that, you know, some of these upfront costs may be slightly more, but the monthly, they're still going to have monthly payments for, you know, the lifetime of their mortgage. And then they have lower utility costs over time. So I'm just going to echo and say that I agree with their statements as well. Thank you.
Okay, and I did have a couple other questions. One is seconding what Deb was saying about the natural landscaping, the plants, especially right across the street from the Conservancy, would be a good place to make sure that's incorporated. But I would view this as, I mean, in a way, a built extension of the Conservancy. I think it would be wonderful to try to incorporate the natural prairie landscaping everywhere possible and not go with traditional landscaping, but instead to, you know, make it almost seem like it's built into the prairie. So that's just my preference. I don't know if Kathleen is still on, but one of the questions I was going to ask her is, is the HOA for either of these places going to allow chickens? Because especially for the eco-agri wellness neighborhood, I think that's an important issue. And then the last one is what'll happen if your stormwater designers aren't able to come up with an approach that meets that 100% goal, you know, where you're draining on the south side, it looks like. I'm told that the soils aren't very good for infiltration down there. So so just wondering what's the plan B?
Well, we'll have to, first of all, determine if the soils do. We're very early in the process here, so let us get to some of the test pits, like I said, and then we'll see where we find out. So I can't answer the question until I know what we have exactly. And as far as chickens, I guess I hadn't really considered that at this point in time yet. But we'll have to take it into consideration for sure. We're here to get your input, so this is all valuable
Sure.
stuff. But I had
And then
not
the natural landscaping too, to the extent, I mean, obviously homeowners will do what they're going to do, but where you've got the green.
That's
Mhm.
the other problem. I mean, I literally have issues in neighborhoods where people will dump their grass clippings in the drainage ways. So I'm looking for your help in this regard too. I would love that. That'd be great. I'm not sure how to physically pull it off with your average homeowner. So I'm just being blatantly honest here in that prairies are not, you don't just go out and scatter a bunch of seeds and all of a sudden you have a prairie. Obviously noxious weeds come into play and they take a lot of maintenance, and they're absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. And I've done it myself and it's great. I don't quite know, and maybe y'all could help me figure out how to get the residents of the neighborhood to buy into the point that they are able to take care of it and actually, make it sustainable. Because we've tried a number of different things, and whether it's new homeowners or, all different types of people, or even if it's senior homeowners that are used to a yard and they wouldn't consider something else. I don't know how to get them to buy into some of these great ideas that you have. I really don't. So if your committee could help with that, I'd be more than happy to work with you guys to try and figure something out. But I'm not smart enough, apparently, after doing this for 30 years, to figure out how to get homeowners to do it correctly. And, I think you brought up a point before that stormwater has to be in the development side and can't rely on 10% of the stormwater infiltration, in my opinion, cannot be relied upon for individual on-lot rain gardens, because I would say that 90% of that 10% is not going to work in 2 years. And half the time we'd literally see people mowing their rain gardens and turning them into yards. So please understand me. I love what you're talking about. It's very important to me, but I can't quite figure out how to make it function in real life. And I'd be more than happy to get your suggestions on that. But I'm also have to be realistic about what the residents of the neighborhood will do down the road, because I've been down the road many, many times. And, we've looked at, you may have seen in Terra Vesta, which is in Fitchburg, they use all of the right-of-ways or terraces as stormwater infiltration areas. So there's 6 feet of basically a swale that is planted, and the developer has planted it. But even in the short 2 years that I've seen that come about, between salt on the roads and there's all kinds of actual physical issues that make it not function well. So if we can figure out how to make that function and work as it's supposed to, then it's great. But, and I don't mean to sound negative, because I'm not trying to do that. I'm just telling you what I've experienced in trying to do these things and where it's fallen flat.
Sure. When we understand, Chad, we really do, because part of our mission is to try to educate our neighbors and help them make more sustainable choices. So we'll be right there with you.
Okay. Well,
trying to crack this
I would
nut
love to work
together.
with you guys, whatever
Yeah.
that means, if it's seminars or workshops or whatever the case is, to actually get people to buy into it, which is what we're really talking about here, because it's going to take a lot of work and effort on their part in order to make it sustainable for the long run. But I'm going to need help with that, because I've not been able to do that.
All right, well, good. We can team up on that. I see Christy,
All right.
Dick, and then Deb, and that looks like it.
Yep, and
Go
I'll
ahead.
try to be quick too. I thought Lisa made a good point. And Chad, yes, I hear you fully. I'm all about this group knows I'm all about the prairies and then the deep-rooted native plants. It is hard, and I hear you. One idea, and we can, talk about this later, as you mentioned, but I said I live in Middleton Hills, and we have community prairie spaces that are actually, one's right behind us, and they are professionally managed. So it's part of our homeowners association, neighborhood association fees that I think it's a Bruce company or somebody comes in, a couple times. We don't do anything, and there's tons of it around. So that might be a model, that it's in there, and that would help you with your stormwater and all that stuff. So just a thought.
Okay, Dick.
Yeah, actually, you raised a good point about salt. And I'm looking at a pretty complex set of streets here, and I saw the planning commission's evaluation of this, and I think they gave you some recommendation to reduce the number of side streets and whatever. And then Deb asked a question, I think it was about the width of the streets. And that wetland, I mean, I walked this road up there and I could see the wetland and the really pretty wet, soggy soils. I would doubt very much that you're going to be able, you could create a wetland there and that would, water would go into it. I doubt if it would infiltrate very much. So, in small events, then there'd be some evapotranspiration, whatever in it. But
No,
certainly
I don't think we'd be relying on that, on the wetland area for the majority of the infiltration. There'd be some
yeah,
retention.
okay,
but not
that's the point I
infiltration.
wanted to make. Yeah, you're not going to get any infiltration down there in the wetland.
There's
So the
actually,
question is about the street densities and things, because you don't want even the pollutants, but road salt is a big one. And everything, it's, 2/3 of the subdivision looks to me like it's going to be draining into the conservancy. And that's the main thing, is to keep all this water, even cut curbs and stuff, to
Those
just
ideas,
keep them-
we definitely want to incorporate those kind of ideas. Those are
yeah,
functional,
just so you're
effective-
fully aware, keeping
Right.
as much water 100%, I think is got to be a goal here, because you're not just an isolated subdivision, you're right next to this very high value conservancy. So
No, we understand that, sir. We understand that. With regard to roads and sidewalks, I mean, yes, we'd like to have narrow roads. The plan commission made some recommendations with regard to the layout of the property, and because of that, there's a couple of alleys were added. There were good points from the plan commission. You have a very good plan commission. So we adjusted to what they told us. We have public works next week, so I guess we'll find out how many sidewalks we have to put in and that kind of stuff. But maybe you guys can get together and tell them that we only want sidewalks on one side of the street or something like that. That would be helpful.
Okay, and Deb, we'll go to you for the last questions.
Okay, as I'm looking at your plan, it appears there's only one entrance and exit on Pheasant Branch Road and one on High Road. And it seems like it's going to be a pretty, a lot of traffic coming in and out of there. Is that, have you done, you must have done studies relating to only one entrance and
Yes.
exit on Pheasant Branch Road? And where is the entrance to Dane County section of the Conservancy? This isn't right across from it, is it?
I'll have Tom explain that last question to you, but Pheasant Branch Road's a little bit tricky because of the outlets that are put on Pheasant Branch Road, and also because of the topography and safety of intersections. We're located right now at the more flat spot of Pheasant Branch Road, so we can look at more entrances, but right now, that's the best possible spot to get to Pheasant Branch Road, and the secondary spot may not really exist. The other thing on High Road, yes, it does condense down to one entrance there, but keep in mind that a lot of these, and maybe this doesn't matter that much, but the whole west side of the neighborhood is neighborhoods within itself. So the entrance to the road is from one location on an alley or from one location from a neighborhood, not every driveway along the road, if that makes sense, what I'm saying. And I'm not sure if that answers your question entirely, but we've talked to staff, and the connections between the land of the south and the land of the north were important to them. And Pheasant Branch, and this is just preliminary, so there's room to move that. But in my opinion, that's probably the best and possibly only good spot to actually have an intersection on Pheasant Branch Road. And
Okay.
Tom, can you point out where is that the parking lot you have on your?
yep, and that's the little parking lot. That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. here,
behind
that's
the
right
E.
nearby.
So it's a little further down the line. Okay. Okay, and the other thing, Pheasant Branch Road is a pretty undeveloped road. There's not even a bike lane on either side. There's no shoulder. And that's the way people wanted it. There was a survey done a number of years ago about improving Pheasant Branch, and they didn't want it improved because a lot of the trees along the way would have to be taken out and stuff. So that's another issue, I think, with the development is just increasing traffic on this little road, So, all right, from there, I was just wondering, do you have any community gardens planned anywhere? It doesn't look like you do, but that seems to be a need in a lot of different communities, community gardens.
Not planned, but I see a lot of areas that could lend themselves to something like that.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions from the members? If not, then thank you very much, Tom, for the presentation, and Chad for being here to field questions, and Kari, and I'm sorry, I forgot the other gentleman's name who had to
Bruce.
drop off. Bruce?
Bruce, yes.
Great. Okay, all right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we'll be talking next. We do our work plan updates, and one of the things we'll be doing is recruiting some volunteers to go over the plans a little more closely, offline, and possibly even attend that public works meeting next week to make a few points about things like sidewalks. So we
Great.
really
Thank
appreciate
you.
you being here, and we hope to be in touch again, if not on a committee meeting, then at a different meeting.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we'll move on then to the work plan updates. Looking at the time, would somebody like to move that we adjourn at 8:30?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn at 8:30 tonight. Kermit is raising his hand to second. Any discussion? All right, if not, those in favor of the motion to adjourn at 8:30 signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, so work plan updates. Let's start with the LED bulb exchange event. And Dick and Deb, as you're getting ready to speak, I just want to remind the members that we have volunteer needs for the Acre Farm review, for the hazardous waste collection event. There's the bike to work week that Kelly mentioned in her staff report, which I hope we can support, even though it kind of came, we didn't have this on our radar, but now we do. And then another thing we didn't have on our radar, but do also on the day after Earth Day, is the EV car and sustainability show that Carol Phelps and others are planning. So we could use some
Point of order
volunteers
on
for that.
on
Sure.
the Acre Farm review. I mean, I don't see how you can be asking a small group of us, whomever, to review it and then represent the whole committee and make a recommendation before the next meeting. So are you thinking that a small committee would come up with a review and then we'd wait to the next meeting and then agree that this is something our committee wants to pass on, or how were you planning on that review?
Well, we have an obligation to provide something because it was referred to us. Unlike the Bell Farm proposal, this one was referred to us. So we need to come up with something. And my thought was, between now and the next meeting, a small group of 2 or even, one very enthusiastic person, but ideally 2 or 3 people would review the proposal a little more closely, maybe compare it to what we just learned about Bell Farm, maybe compare it to some of the, well, I don't even know if the building design sustainability measures for the community campus, I don't know if that incorporated anything that would be relevant to these types of developments. But yes, I was hoping that before the next meeting, or at the next meeting in April, we'd be able to have a discussion about what our input is going to be. Kermit, your hand is raised.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, and perhaps Abby has the perspective to give us some insight. What is the expectation after a referral? What is the nature of the feedback we are intended or expected to provide? And how should that be developed and presented?
Yep, well, this is really early in the project, which is the time that you want to be providing feedback about what you want to see, because there's still lots of opportunities for them to make changes. This project was referred to 6 committees. I expect that each one will at least have had a preliminary discussion of the project by mid-April. I think it's going to all, I think the last one would be Ped Bike Transit, which is sometime in mid-April. It's probable that other committees will not be able to make a recommendation on the very first look at it, and that's okay. I think if you waited until your April meeting and you gave, a bullet point list of kind of the broad overview of what you want to see included in the development, we can carry those forward as the project moves through the city's review process. They haven't submitted an application to annex the property. They have not submitted an application for a preliminary plat or rezoning. This property will also have to be brought into the urban service area. For some perspective, we've been working with Kathleen Slattery-Moshkow on her project since 2019, and nothing has been built. So this is very early. You have time, but I think that it would be good to at least have some initial feedback at the April meeting, if possible.
The April meeting of the Planning Commission.
No, the April meeting of the Sustainability
Of us.
Committee.
Okay.
Okay. Dick, your hand is raised again. Does that
I'm
answer
sorry,
your?
I had one quick follow-up.
Oh,
I mean,
sure, go ahead, Kermit,
What are-
sorry.
I'm sorry, Abby, but and others perhaps. What are the constraints on what we can ask for? Because I mean, in the enchanted land I would like to live in, I would say, I want them to do what Kathleen is attempting to do in her development.
Yep.
But is that like, yeah, there's no carrot, there's no stick, there's no way we can make that happen? Or I mean, what perspective can you give us on that?
Well, I've been with the city for 15 years, and Kathleen's project is the only one where from the initial proposal, almost everyone in our department at least was on board. I mean, it's pretty far above and beyond what we've seen any other developer even attempt. I will say that this is Kathleen's first project. So it's going to be important to make sure that everything gets carried through to completion. She's been awesome to work with. She's pretty much incorporated every suggestion that any committee has provided. This project, the Acre Farm, will require a rezoning. And so in general, the city can't place a lot of additional requirements beyond the state building code on projects unless they're asking for either a rezoning or they're asking for some type of city assistance like tax increment financing. So because this project requires a rezoning, I think there are a lot of opportunities to embed any committee recommendations into the rezoning request. They probably are going to request approval for a planned development district for this development, assuming that it jumps ahead of the city's new zoning ordinance getting completed. And so what we've done with Bell Farm is when the GIP request comes before the Plan Commission, all of the important recommendations that came out of the committee discussion, those are included as a contingency of the rezoning. And that's because once the property is rezoned, we aren't going to have any additional leverage to require things beyond the state minimum after that. And so we have to make sure that those are included as a contingency of the rezoning. So that's why when you see things go to the city council and there's like 20 different contingencies, it's because we're keeping the leverage that the city has to make those requirements.
And how are those contingencies enforceable beyond the zoning or rezoning decision?
We review, our staff reviews all of those contingencies before we issue a permit for any construction. So that's kind of the backstop on the other end, is when we receive an application for a building permit, we go back through all of the approvals and we look at the minutes and we create a checklist with all the contingencies and we circulate that to all the different departments who review projects. It's not just planning, their, you know, fire department has to look at access and public works looks at utilities. So we circulate that to every single department that was involved in the review. Everybody has to sign off.
Okay, thank you for that really helpful clarification, Abby. Dick?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad Abby said that we have until the next meeting in order to make our agreed upon recommendation. That gives me some comfort that we're not going to rush it through and not have a chance to view it at all. I think tonight, I think Deb really got at a key point here. This is a huge subdivision and this dumping out on roads, one on each end, that particularly the Pheasant Branch Road can hardly handle the traffic it's got, much less a whole lot more. And we've raised another issue that there's a whole lot of water that slopes off and is heading towards the Conservancy. And quite frankly, we should make it a requirement that they hold 100% water. And that we're looking at also the pollutants of road salt, because that doesn't stop, with wetlands and ponds. So I think the thing is too big for where it's placed, given the roads and the Conservancy and other things else. And I don't know whether we have any control over the size of it, but this subdivision seems like it's there to maximize profits for the developer and a whole lot of homes, and whatever goes in, and it's got to be done right in order to at least make the 100%. And I'm not sure if we can even require 100%. So they may say they'd like to go to 100%, but if their standard is only 90, maybe Rick can comment on that. But I think if we're going to make an informed discussion about it, given that its place is right next to the Conservancy, we've got to do everything we can to protect it and its access and the environment. And quite frankly, I mean, Pheasant Branch Road, somebody's going to have to redevelop that road if they're going to put all these homes, half of them are going to go out to Pheasant Branch Road. I see some big problems with it, but and that's aside from all our desire for solar and telling them or the homeowner that you should be sustainable. And it's all left up to the homeowner, and that's a whole nother issue, but that's not part of the approval process, I think, of the development itself.
Okay, Kelsey?
Hi, I'm wondering if any of folks' concerns would be alleviated if there were lights at these entrance. Did they talk about that and I missed that? I'm sorry.
I did not hear it, and no one asked a question about it, so I really don't know, but that's a good point.
Yeah, Deb or Dick, do you think things would be better if there were traffic lights, stoplight?
I don't think the traffic light's the issue. I think it's just a very narrow Pheasant Branch Road. Like Deb was saying, she and I walked it on Sunday. You can't even get off the edge of the road where you're into a ditch. So it's a very narrow road. It doesn't even have a center stripe down it. You have to pass each car carefully, each staying on your side of the road. And so you're going to be putting out hundreds of more cars on this road that are commuting back and forth to their homes. So I think that in itself, the Planning Commission should be right on top of, and that's less of an environmental concern to the Conservancy necessarily, but the runoff issue, the Conservancy is my big one, I guess, from this committee's point.
Can I jump in just really quickly?
Yes, please.
I can't raise my hand. So I just wanted to, for one, mention that the city will require a traffic impact analysis for the project. Any rezoning requires a traffic study. And so we're not even close to the point where we would begin that, but we use our own consultants we require the developer to cover the costs of the study, and any traffic safety improvements that are recommended or required as part of the project are funded and paid for by the developer, not by the general tax levy. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is that this project was reviewed by the Water Resources Management Commission on March 16th, and they did recommend that the site be designed to achieve 100% infiltration. They had a couple of other recommendations as well, but I won't get into those right now.
And it wasn't that the recommendation of the Friends of Pheasant Branch as well?
Yes.
In the letter that we've
in their
got?
letter. Yep.
Okay. Rick, I'll have you answer the question that Dick posed or comment on what he had asked you to comment.
Yeah, I think, you know, that the question, Rich
You're totally breaking up.
All right, maybe, is it any better now, or is it really?
Not really.
Not
Can you
good.
type in the chat what you're going to say? It sounds like you've got two microphones going. At least that's what I think it is. Okay. Sorry about that. All right, well, let's try to settle this now. Who might be available and willing to take on the task of coming up with some bullet points? Dick, Deb, since the Conservancy is kind of it's your skill that you bring to our merry band here. You're the safe cracker, so this is right up your alley.
Yeah, I guess I can, yep.
Okay. All right, so we'll have Deb and Dick do the Acre Farm review. Kermit, you're raising your hand?
Two things. One, Abby's notes and the comments that were made would perhaps be a quick way to cut and paste to jumpstart the bullet list. And two, I will invite Dick and Deb to keep me in the loop, but let them take the lead. So if they have a time that works for them, they should do it, and I'll try to join them. But my crystal ball is awfully foggy through April because of, Earth Month.
Yes. Okay, so thank you, Deb and Dick, and Abby, if there's any information you can push to those two, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you two would keep Kermit in the loop, that would be great. And now, just by coincidence, we're back to you two because you've got the LED bulb exchange.
Yes, well, the update on ordering the bulbs is as follows. The 40 watt equivalent and 75 watt equivalent are available, and they were ordered 500 of each. The 100s, Tony wasn't sure. He still isn't sure if they're available or not. But the 60s definitely are not available, and they're now 65 watt equivalents, and they won't be available until May. And I'm going to turn it over to Dick because he walked through the Boss House and he has more particulars to talk about what they need.
Okay, thanks.
Just quick, we ordered 3,000 bulbs and 1,500 of them were the 60s, which are now going to be 65 watts, okay? And these are all the whole lot. We went with warm 2,700K versus the 5,000 bright whites. Okay. I had a chance to meet with the resident manager of Voss House, and she gave me a tour. They had one room that they were remodeling, so nobody was in it. So I got a chance to see, and all rooms are the same. They have 66 units, and they have been remodeling, putting in ceiling light and bathroom kitchen light wall fixtures. And they've done the first floor, they've done half the second floor, they still have half to go on the second floor and all the third floor. If you add up all the bulbs in all these, that's about 14 bulbs per unit, but they've done half. The resident manager said they're about running out of their bulbs, but they're putting in these really bright white fluorescent looking bulbs. That's what they put in, so we wouldn't want to change those. So I did email her and say, well, if you'd like us to help, it would amount to about 400 bulbs, maybe 500, 500 bulbs that they would need for the ceiling and permanent fixtures. And it's only $100 and some, so it's not a big deal out of our budget. So, but we would want to order the same bright ones. So that would be an additional 500, but they'd be on back order again until May, and I don't know if they want them sooner than that or not. So we'll wait and find out. But the other thing is, the residents have about 5 lamps. She figured that the project manager or the resident manager, that they have about each resident, each apartment unit has about 5 floor lamps and table lamps. And so, and they're probably the older bulbs because they're responsible. By the way, the apartment renter is responsible for all the electricity. So even the ceiling lamps that Voss House is putting in, they have to pay for that. But it's good they're committed to doing LEDs. So that's good. So it would amount to about 330 bulbs, 5 bulbs times 66 units on average that we would need to replace. Not that many. And there's probably a mixture. And I think it was Christy that mentioned, well, older people like brighter lights. And so maybe we are looking more on the 75 to 100 range for certain lights for reading and things. But Kiwanis is very committed to helping do work in the distribution of it. Voss House is going to move ahead and do an inventory of each apartment unit. So we'll know actually how many bulbs we need to replace. But a rough estimate would be 300 to 330. But with the back order of bulbs being on the 60s, we may find that we don't have hundreds yet either, just 40s and 75s. It may be that the 40s, given that the bathroom fixtures are all being covered and replaced by the Voss House itself, that we may not have a lot of use for the 40s. We can't really move ahead yet until we get all the different types of bulbs, particularly the 60s. But we are ready. We will be ready to move as soon as the inventory is done, hopefully within a month. And then we'll see what we can replace with what we do have or will have, and then what we'll need to wait on for additional bulbs. So, and they also gave me this woman gave me the name of the regional manager of these kinds of units. And we could talk with this person about the broader project that Kelly has got started, where we could do weatherization and even put solar on. And so we're looking ahead and trying to do something on that. But that's going to take a while to work out all the logistics on that. So stay tuned. That could very well carry into fall before we really have anything concrete to report, though.
But the idea is the Voss House is our test case. And once we get that under our belts and see how that all plays out, then we could be looking at other older apartment buildings that we can target and do a similar thing. But I think it's very important to get these bulbs at 25 cents a piece while they're being offered by the government. And then all we'll have to do is store them until we can, get different apartments online.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. So everyone could start thinking about different apartments in their neighborhoods or different districts. Because I do think this will be a good test case.
Yeah, Kelly said that they have an inventory of apartment units and they know where many of them are being rented by lower income people based on the neighborhoods. So I think we're going to have to really work with Kelly and make this a project that the city, and since Abby's here and Abby is Kelly's supervisor, to get a real commitment from the city for having us help all these older apartments, many of which are either used by students or lower income people with less economic means, to try and upgrade all the electrical usage in them.
Kermit, quick question, but we do need to move on because we only have about 7 minutes left to get through our work plan.
Okay, okay. Okay, I'm going to leapfrog to a new topic then, because I think it's higher leverage. And this is primarily for Abby. In our conversations, we've kind of bought into yes, the land should be developed, the zoning should be changed. Is it conceivable and allowable that we could say the zoning shouldn't be changed, the land shouldn't be developed because of all the adverse sustainability and environmental impacts? Or
I think
Okay, so
that would
Kermit-
be really difficult, Kermit, because the city has such a limited growth area. And it's all basically this area. It's already been in long-term plans to be developed as part of the city. We entered into an agreement with the town
Okay.
of Springfield, and we preserved all of the land to the north that was identified as really high quality farmland. So I think that would be pretty difficult, and we, private property owners have the rights to do
yep, I
certain
know.
things under, when they've been in plans and then official city documents for decades.
Okay, so there is a
But-
long-term planning history that set this up. And what is it currently zoned as anyways?
It's zoned as ag right now because it's not in the city of Middleton. So when it gets annexed into Middleton, it probably will be rezoned to temporary ag holding until it goes through the process to receive its, formal designation, which is likely to be planned development district.
Okay, but that's a good question, Kermit. I like that you're thinking outside the box. And also Rick had indicated in the chat that he's willing to share some ideas with Deb and Dick on the Acre Farm review. Okay, so let's move on to Sustainable U. Deb, you want to give just a 20-second report on your phenomenally successful March 17th Sustainable U / Conservancy Day?
Yeah, except for my technology. Other than that, Jim Bachhuber did a talk on the watershed and where all the water comes from. We had 116 people sign up. We had 67 show up. But of course, other people can look at the recorded message.
The video.
Oh, what happened?
We're still here. Can you hear us?
I had a phone call come in and now I don't see anybody. Well, anyway, that's basically it. Oh, there it is.
We're here.
Okay.
We can see you, even if you can't see us.
I
Okay,
just
and
use my technology and then my technology goes black. So anyway, that's pretty much it. And there won't be one in April, and the next one's coming up in May with climate change and Bob Lindmeyer on, I think it's the 12th. Is that correct? That's Sustainable U. Yeah.
Yep. So, and Abby just put in the chat that the library director was really impressed at the number of attendees. And she said it goes to show the importance of holding the events regularly. So that makes it unfortunate that I'm going to mention that we did cancel our April session just because, things were getting really busy for all of us. But we still have June on deck for, we had talked about having Brad Hopwood do a recycling reboot, and then using that as an opportunity to talk about composting as well, or native landscaping, whatever is timely. But we also could use it as an opportunity to have the youth and MCP ASD Sustainability Committee featured. So I guess my recommendation to the committee would be to go forward with this June session and whatever the topic might be, just to keep that momentum going, because this was our biggest, by far the biggest registration, and I think the biggest attendance. And I think it's more than what the Friends have been getting for their Conservancy days too. So we can't just say it's because we had the benefit of the Friends audience. It's, working together, we've grown the audience. And I think that's really, really terrific. And we got all kinds of very positive feedback from the attendees. We got 22 people filled out the evaluation, which is huge. That's a lot.
But I think Zoom People like
Zoom.
Zoom. They don't
Yep.
have to drive and be face to face and whatever. So I really like to keep it Zoom, or at least a hybrid.
Well, and I think the one in May is sort of a special one because we want to have an opportunity to share information, have tables for the Friends, if the Friends are co-hosting, for 350 Madison, or the working group here in Middleton, and then for our Sustainability Committee. So that one is going to be in person at the library. Rick, I see your hand raised. You're muted.
Or something.
Yeah. Nope, you're still muted. You'll have to
Microphone's
in.
not plugged in, maybe?
Type it in the chat, or you have to select the headset. Okay, so we're running out of time. School sustainability. Daphne, has anything happened?
Yeah, we actually finally, the subcommittee that I belong to, the waste reduction subcommittee, finally met last week. And basically I sort of found out that Mrs. Ames is retiring, the assistant superintendent, this year. So that's why she really hasn't responded to any of my emails, and that's why the sustainability committee really hasn't moved forward. But I have found 3 students to sort of replace me and to be on each of the 3 subcommittees. I learned that we're applying to a lot of large scale grants for a composter that we would really like to have at Middleton High School, because one of our biggest things that contribute to our waste is food waste from the cafeteria. And if we would be able to buy like a large scale industrial sized composter, we could dramatically reduce our waste. And that's sort of what we've been applying, like we're applying grants for that. We're also creating better labels for our trash and recycling bins. There's still a lot of confusion among the students about what can and cannot be recycled. So we're trying to make that more clear. We are beginning to recycle single-use masks at Middleton High School, and we're slowly phasing out those whiteboard markers, like the typical ones, and we're trying to purchase more refillable markers where you can just replace the cartridge. We're also recycling batteries and writing utensils, and Green Team is organizing a lot of trash pickups around the school grounds, such as the parking lot, the tennis fields, the football stadium bleachers. But other than that, I haven't heard too much from the rest of the committee. A lot of people in the committee are retiring this year, which kind of explains how slowly we've been moving. So, yeah.
Okay. That's a lot of, I mean, that's great that you got so much to report back to us, because I know it's been a little frustrating to you not to have more. And I wonder, it's probably the timing wouldn't be right for you to have gotten the grants to get a composter. But I wonder are you still interested in possibly doing the June, having the June focus for Sustainable U be on maybe the school sustainability committee, or do you think maybe with the retirements, we should postpone that and put that in the fall if we continue this series? Because by then maybe Ms. Ames's replacement for at least the sustainability committee, her replacement might have been named.
Yeah, her replacement has already been named, but he doesn't come in, I believe, until like July.
Okay.
And also, like, there's pretty much nobody on the committee anymore except for me and 2 other people. So I don't know how much we would be of use.
Okay, well, we can schedule a call of the Sustainable Use subgroup and figure out what we would like to do. One option would be to use it as our opportunity to get public input on the Sustainable City Plan. If we don't do something in April or May, that's an opportunity, because that we should time that in coordination with the strategic plan, which is moving along and should be done in May or June. Okay. Well, thank you for that update. Compost at Stonehorse Green. Do we need to talk about this now? We don't have Spencer, and I know this is one of the projects he's working on. We heard from Mike Davis that he'd prefer to see us do something like incentivize composting at the senior center. Abby, do we need to, is something happening very soon that we need to get in on?
We're going to, I think we can hold off until after your next meeting to order the containers and the bins. I share Mike's concern, just having seen what people do to our recycling containers in downtown right now. I would love to find a way to make it work. My only concern is purchasing anything that is not retrofittable if we decide that the compost is not working out. So I think we have a solution with a 2-bin system, and then one half is divided into 2 other separate parts. So we would have recycling and compost in that one half. And then if it doesn't work out, we don't lose the whole system. You know what I mean? We don't have to replace the entire bin, which they're about $1,500 each. So I think we can hold off on ordering them until after the April meeting. And then we were looking to the committee to figure out what the signage needs to look like. And then I think the committee was also working on trying to figure out the cost for having the collection done. And Kelly had given me a cost estimate, but it was for a weekly collection. And I was just thinking in the summer months, we probably need that to be collected more often than weekly if we don't want it to be smelly and have other issues. So.
Yep. Dick, quick question from
Yeah,
you.
thanks. Mike Davis gave a comment, of course, at the start of the meeting that he was asking actually that we hold off on composting collection in the general city area until we get it up and running and starting. He was suggesting the senior center. And when he was making that comment, I was thinking exactly what Daphne was talking about at the high school, trying to get these programs up and running and showing they're really working. Are we committed to putting compost bins down in the city now? Because I thought Mike was saying he's hoping we wouldn't.
No, that's what we're talking about. We had talked about doing it at Stonehorse Green since that is being built. And Mike raised the concern. Christy.
Thank you. I always had that in my head, the back of my head actually, about, is this really practical? Because I can hardly even get my kids. This morning, I took out 3 little orange juice containers out of the trash, took the straws out, put them in the recycle bin. I mean, and like, I'm ridiculously trying to get the kids to comply, you know, here. So I do see it as a major problem. But I love the senior center idea, and the school is fantastic idea as well. Thank you.
Okay, so let's put composting and figuring this out on our April agenda. If I look at the last items, and I am aware we're past 8:30, the celebration, don't need to report on. Strategic plan, not urgent now. Zoning code rewrite, Spencer's our guy and he's not here. So that just leaves the hazardous waste collection event, and everybody already knows it's April 23rd from 8 to 12, I believe. So if you are interested and available and can help out, please email Kelly directly so she will know. And we don't know what the actual plan is, but if you want to find out what it is to see whether or not you'd like to commit to help, please contact Kelly. And then that just leaves the fleet plan subgroup. Dominic, do you have anything you want to report now, or are you still, is it still in the works?
Still in the works.
Not ready for prime time?
Still in the works. We've got we have 3 documents drafted at this point: a preliminary life cycle analysis tool that's been forwarded over to Brad Hopwood, perhaps a little bit preemptively in hopes of catching him before meeting with the finance director. And then since then, 2 additional documents: one that describes the methodology and the algorithms used to predict carbon and costs through the whole life cycle. And then, because both those documents are pretty heinous, we made a 3rd document to kind of walk you through using the tool. So those have been circulated among the team. Right now, we're kind of digesting those individually, and we'll meet again and revise them. I should also say that we in one of our earlier meetings, we put together kind of a work plan just so that we're all clear about what we're hoping to achieve, and how we're sequencing through those various tasks.
That's great. Thank you, and Kermit too for carrying the load on that for our sustainability committee. Appreciate that. Daphne asked me to repeat the date. It's April 23rd. That's the date of the hazardous waste collection in the morning from 8 to 12. There's also an EV car and sustainability show that's going to be taking place later that day. I'm going to be there from 10 to 2, staffing our sustainability committee booth. If anybody would like to join me, you can, but if I'm all by myself, that's fine too, because I will be bringing my husband to keep me company. But you're welcome to attend the event because I think it's going to be good.
Lisa,
All right.
which was that at?
I think it's Middleton.
Middleton Community
Kermit,
Church. It's at Middleton Community Church.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Okay, and then the last item is our standing agenda item. I jotted down for next time. We've got composting, a discussion about that. Of course, our work plan and the things we didn't get to talk about now, like celebration and strategic planning. One thing, I'm sorry that Katie is not here, because one thing I wanted to put on the agenda for next month is the chicken ordinance. I know council is set to, I hope not repeat their performance from last week, marathon session to discuss the proposed chicken ordinance. I think it's a sustainability issue. I mean, it's certainly something that we probably should have had on our radar, because we don't want to make things onerous for people who are trying to, provide their own food. It's a good activity, and unfortunately, there have been some experiences that haven't been very positive for neighbors of chicken keepers. But anyway, this is a pretty elaborate ordinance, and I would like to ask Katie Nelson to ask council to hold off until the sustainability committee can look at it and see if we want to. I would have put it on the agenda for tonight if I could have, but I do think it's something that we should at least weigh in on. Not suggesting that we rewrite the ordinance, but give a thumbs up or down to this, you're on the right track, or no, this is absolutely not going to help us achieve our sustainability goals related to food. So unless there's an objection from anybody, I will just ask Katie. I'll ask Katie to make that suggestion at the next council meeting, because that is when they're supposed to come back to it. I really can't imagine they'll be ready to pass it on that day, because they were going to be making edits. So perhaps Katie will be able to convince them to hold off until we can talk about it in April.
Don't forget the acre farm development.
Yes. Oh, I won't forget the acre farm development.
And
now we know how it's pronounced, so we can make sure that, that everybody in Middleton knows. Okay, all right. Well, thank you all very much. And Abby, when you get the chat for this, could you share it with me and maybe the others? I don't know if that's allowed, but I know there's a lot of good information in the chat, especially some volunteering going on, so I don't want to miss that. But with that, I'll thank everybody for hanging in there tonight. And obviously we have a lot going on. One of these days we will turn to the discussion of, is it time to ask council to add a few additional members to this committee, because we have a big mission and a lot of work to be done, and many hands make the work light. So thank you all.
Lisa, I said I would volunteer for the hazardous waste, but I did have a few questions about it. And you said
Sure.
that we would get more information before the commitment is finalized,
Yes.
but that's what my
Yep.
plan is, to find out more from Kelly on that.
Okay, sounds
But
good.
I am volunteering if it's not wearing Tyvek suit for 4 hours. with
I
rubber
hear
gloves
you. And no bathroom.
And no
Yeah.
bathroom, that's the critical one.
Okay, all right. Well, everyone have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you next month. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.